Hello, I'm Martijn Gaat and this is Does Logistics Matter? A podcast on trends and innovations in supply chain and logistics. Answering yes to the question today is Frank Breedijk, Chief Information Security Officer at Schuberg, Philis. In this episode, we talk about how hackers hack into corporate systems and installations, examples of actual cybersecurity attacks in supply chain and logistics, what you can do to prevent being hacked, and what you need to do when you do get hacked. Please enjoy my conversation with Frank Breedijk. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
My first question is always, does logistics matter?
I think you can hardly argue that logistics doesn't matter. We're increasingly in a world where logistics matter because you get your food delivered to your house. You order stuff from China that gets shipped to your house. Companies stopped stockpiling and relying on local resources. I think without logistics, the world comes to a halt.
It will sure do. Can you? What is your connection to logistics?
I think my connection to logistics is the same as the average citizen. I don't work for a logistics company. I work for an IT company. Obviously, we have customers in that are in some sort of supply chain or in logistics or have something to do with logistics, but I'm not a logistics expert by any mean, and maybe that makes me an odd duck here in this show. It's just, for me, it's just normal. The normal connection with logistics that everybody has.
Yeah, and you work in an IT company, and your specialty is cybersecurity.
Yeah, I'm a Chief Information Security Officer, or a CISO as it's called, which basically means that the buck stops at me when there's something involved with security. And besides that, I'm a volunteer for a Dutch cybersecurity initiative.
Okay, and which initiative is that?
That's the Dutch Institute for Vulnerability Disclosure, a group of volunteers that tries to make the internet and the world safer by finding vulnerabilities and reporting them.
And this is what I think the public knows as white hackers.
Ethical hacking.
Ethical hack, that's even better.
Responsible disclosure, white hat it's the older term that's being used, like the cowboy movies where you immediately knew who the bad guy was.
Yeah.
Because he was wearing the black hat, and I wish real life was as this thing would happen would be there in real life as well.
Yeah, if only they had hats.
If only people would wear hats. Like, I'm a good guy. That would really help.
That would be either. But I agree with you. Ethical hacker does sound much better. IT security has been a big issue in the past years in logistics. And supply chain. We've seen some terrible examples with huge impact. Maersk has been impacted. CMA, to name two shipping lines. A huge logistics service provider, Expeditors, has been the victim of an attack. FedEx has been hit, and there are many more. There's the Colonial Pipeline. So we have many examples where supply chains have been impacted by cybersecurity. Can you explain the basics?
Yeah, so what you see in all these things is that it revolves around ransomware, and I think we can say that we've had the Corona pandemic, but I think there's also a ransomware pandemic going on, and it's not specifically targeting logistics; it's targeting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But and the key thing with ransomware is. So I've been in this business, in the IT security business, for a long time, in the sense that this field is relatively new, and I've been doing something with IT security for 20 odd years now. Yeah, so ransomware. When I was in college, we learned, and this was admittedly a long time ago, but 20 years ago, I learned that they would steal your data and they would sell it to your competitor. But cyber criminals grew smart. And they figured out that there was one party that was willing to pay more than your worst competitor for your data, and that's you.
Yeah.
And because you know how much it hurts not to be able to get to your own data, you know exactly what is in your data. You know how much reputational damage you will get if your data gets leaked. And it's got a ransomware attack has basically got 3 phases.
Yeah.
There's the in phase, and during the in phase, they will infiltrate your company, and that can be as easy as getting an email. You click on it, it says you have to log in back to your Google Workspace or your Office 365 or your Office environment. You type your username, you type your password, it doesn't work. You type it again, it works. But the first time it wasn't actually Office 365 or Google Workspace, it was the attacker. And they now have your password.
Yeah.
And they can go into your environment. But it could also be things like that Exchange server that somebody manages for you or you manage yourself that you forgot to patch this month. And there's a vulnerability in there, a way to open the door and get into the server and start from there. And then in most attacks, for a long time, nothing will happen because then we're in the true phase. And in the true phase, they will try to move what we call is moving laterally. They will try to get from that one system they have into each and every other system. And in the meantime, they often also download your data.
Yeah.
And why they do that, I'll get to that later.
Okay.
But they get data from you, they get into your systems, and they try to find, to get as big a hole. And maybe they try to learn something about you. Maybe if you have a cyber insurance, how much profit you make, what customers you have. And then we get to the phase where people usually notice that something is going on, and that's the out phase. The phase in which they're trying to get money out of you.
That's the phase where users see their screen blocked with the pirate flag and the
and they get a very very friendly reminder or friendly message saying we demand this amount of money in some sort of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, although Bitcoin is not that popular anymore. It's now often more often Monero or another digital currency.
Okay.
And they say, pay here. And that's how they get their money out. But that's also where your business stops.
Yeah.
So if you look at logistics, for instance, I think the least vulnerable to these attacks are, for instance, the LNG terminals, the liquefied natural gas terminals, because that's so explosive. They don't allow electronics on plant.
Yes.
So everything is written with a crayon on a clipboard, and people know what was in the ship. You won't have a problem. But if you look at for instance, a container terminal, nobody knows which container is where.
Yeah.
It's all in the computers. So if that gets ransomed, then you're lost.
Yeah, everything stops.
Everything stops because we simply, you can show up with your truck and say, I need, and you can give the container number and you can tell this is my container. It should be on this huge terrain here somewhere, but you just won't be able to find it.
Yeah.
And everything is and then those are the two ends of the spectrum. But you even see that plannings are so tight with trucks that if you're not able to access your computer and your communication technology, well, at least it will get a whole lot more inefficient. But often you won't even be able to drive, because if you're in the business of delivering packages for a web shop, you don't know where. Well, you might know where to pick up the packages, but you don't know where to deliver them anymore.
Yeah, I know, that's true. Yeah, the planning, everying stuff, it becomes extremely slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
best case,
or a worst case, and that's what happened to during the attack on Colonial Pipelines.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't actually manage to hold the systems that operated the pipeline, but they weren't sure if these systems were okay or not okay. And the safety risks of losing those systems in the middle of the operation was too great a risk, and they decided to halt the operation of the Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah.
And I think we're here in the Netherlands. I think the most well known to the general public is what's now labeled the cheese hack.
The cheese hack.
Cheese hack. There was a logistics partner that one of the things they did was the logistics around cheese for the largest Dutch supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually led to notices in supermarkets where there were little pieces of paper in the coolers saying, sorry, there's no cheese today because of a cyber attack on one of our logistics partners.
Yeah.
And I think we'll survive a couple of days without cheese.
We should be fine.
But
being Dutch.
Yeah, but a lot of medicine nowadays gets shipped through mail as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things arrive in our houses on demand.
Yeah, and there's definitely more critical items than cheese.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just a good illustration of what can happen.
Yeah. So, and you were saying they first they get in and then they move laterally, and I think when we talked before the podcast, you spoke about the hack at Maersk, and I think that was a great example of how they got in to the system at some point, and then started moving laterally.
Yes, and the Maersk hack is really interesting in the sense that I don't think it wasn't targeted at Maersk.
Okay.
It's so yeah. In order to explain it, I need to explain a little bit what happened there.
Yeah,
so,
please.
It started with a so the way they got in was through an update of a bit of software. And it was a very specific piece of software that was very much targeted towards the Ukrainian market.
Okay.
Because it's software MEDOC that is designed to file your VAT tax report for the Ukrainian market.
Yeah, that's
and
very specific.
only got the Ukrainian tax laws in there. So. Why would you target that software? Because you're targeting Ukrainian companies.
Yeah.
And Maersk has an office in the Ukraine. And what happened in the Ukraine was that what happened there was that software all of a sudden started to either encrypt or wipe. To this day, it's not really clear, or it's actually pretty clear now. It looked like a ransomware attack, but it was actually a wiper attack. It was really aimed just at sabotage.
Yeah, what's the difference?
So ransomware is really, I do it for the ransom. So I'm
blocking your system.
I'm blocking your system, but I'm holding your system hostage.
Yeah.
It's like kidnapping, but then data napping.
Yes.
I grab your data, I make it inaccessible to you, and if you give me money, I give back your child, or in this case, your data.
Yes.
There are people who paid to get their data back.
Yeah.
Because people think Bitcoin payments are anonymous. They are anonymous, but they're also very visible.
Yeah.
Everybody can see you can see which wallet paid what to which wallet. So the wallet that was used for the attack on Maersk and other companies, NotPetya it's called in my world, the NotPetya attacks. That wallet received money, and that money is still in that wallet.
Okay.
So if they were after it for the money, which most criminals are, I think Will Sutton is misquoted saying, "Why do you rob banks? Well, because that's where the money is."
Yeah.
Why do you ransom systems? Because that's how I make money. In this case, the money was deposited and nobody took the money out.
Okay.
Which it's actually suspected that Maersk wasn't brought down by criminals, but by what we call nation-state actors.
Okay.
And to make it more specific, it's generally thought that this was Russia trying to do an act of cyber war on Ukraine.
Yeah. that makes sense.
And not a criminal gang trying to get money.
So actually, Maersk shutting down was like bad luck and collateral damage almost.
Collateral damage. It was collateral damage, and it's really interesting to see how an attack on the administrative processes of filing VAT returns in the Ukraine can proliferate and cause the cranes here in the harbor of Rotterdam to stop, and having to get people on a plane to an office in Africa to get the one surviving copy of their general Active Directory, their general identity store. And I think one of the things that that companies should realize in this day and age is that they should be better at separating the critical systems from the non-critical systems.
Yeah,
because the what we call the attack surface, the point where you can get in of an entire company, it's so big. But I shouldn't be able to go from filing tax returns to stopping cranes in the harbor. That's like getting crazy. A heart attack from a fungus nail or
hitting your toe.
Yeah, it's like bumping your toe and then getting cardiac arrest. It's that shouldn't happen, and that doesn't happen in the body because, well, that heart muscle does something autonomous and it's protected.
Yeah.
So simple things that should hurt you if your office network gets infected, that shouldn't stop your trucks from driving. So really put a good separation in. Maybe use different parties for your critical systems and your non-critical systems. Because your critical systems also deserve more care than your non-critical systems.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. So the most, I would say, so what you're saying is the most important step is this critical, non-critical separation. But there's a lot of, I think, easier things or simpler things that they should do also.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things you can do. So if you look at the ecosystem of cybercrime, you can differentiate a couple of things. But what you have to realize is these are criminal enterprises.
Yeah.
This is, in a way, you could say this is organized crime. And you have different targets you have different modes of operation. You have very determined attackers who really go like, okay, who has a lot of money, who would be willing to pay that money, and we're going to target those. That's like the bank robbers. Why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
But you also have loads of more opportunistic actors in that.
Yeah, they
world.
just walk through the street and they just wiggle every door. And then when the door opens, they jump in, grab something, and run away.
Yeah, or if they wiggle a door and the door is open, they actually make a copy of your door key when you leave it in the door.
Yeah,
and they do nothing because their specialty is not stealing. Their specialty is finding that initial access. And these companies are, and I call them companies or criminals. Mm-hmm. But they call themselves initial access brokers. So they literally sell on a marketplace on the dark web. They sell, I have access to this company, I have access to this company, I have this company, who wants it?
Okay.
And then a ransomware operator takes over that access, I now have the key to your house. I'm going to ransack the place.
Yeah.
And there's low-grade targets and high-grade targets, and there's people who say, you know what, I'll buy initial access, I'll go look around if there's anything value in it. Mm-hmm. And if it's a really high-priced target, it's maybe a bit too rich for me, I'll sell it on to another. And there's a whole marketplace and organization. And ransomware gangs are very well organized. They even have their own help desk. If you don't know how to buy Bitcoin, they'll connect you to a help desk operator who will walk you through how to buy Bitcoins.
That's just crazy. So your system has been hacked. You're getting the message, and you say, "Well, I want to pay ransom, but I don't know how." And then, please hold.
Please hold. I'll transfer you to your help desk, who will walk you through. Who will be very friendly.
Wow.
And the same is true with negotiations. These people have professional negotiators. So they'll do a professional negotiation if they have data on you. There's one case that is known where a small company got ransomed, and the ransom demand was 2 million.
Yeah.
Now this is a small company, so it did a turnover of less than 2 million, let alone profit.
Yeah.
And they asked in negotiation, it's like, it's all good and fine that you ask 2 million, but I
don't have it.
I don't have it. It's not my pockets are not that deep. And the answer was, well, actually, we found on your network that you have a cyber insurance that pays out 2 million.
Yeah.
So I don't even want your money. I just want the insurance's money. That was their negotiation tactics.
Wow.
But that's the level of sophistication that you're up. These guys are, just like IT is getting more professional, IT crime has gotten a lot more professional as well. You're not up against amateurs. You're not up against 15, 16-year-old people who are sitting in their mom's basement playing criminal. No, you're up against organized crime.
Yeah, really professional organizations with
it's actually there's actually statistics around, and obviously these are guesstimates because they don't file tax returns. But that the amount of money circulating in ransomware at this moment exceeds the amount of money that's circulating in drugs. So it's the biggest crime sector in money compared to drugs, and it's less physical risk as well.
Yeah.
I mean, here in the harbor, you have the uithalers, the people who try to get drugs from containers.
Yeah.
That's dangerous physical work.
Yeah.
I guess they feel a lot less threatened when they're sitting in their operations center behind their computer, or maybe just at home behind their computer.
Yeah. Well, crooks work from home as well.
Yeah. but still, there's a physical element, etc. So it's it's a big crime sector. And what are the things you can do? It's still opportunity makes the crime.
Yeah.
So unless you're being targeted, and that's why I got to this thread, it's like the difference between being targeted and being a victim of opportunity. A lot of cybercrime criminals, a lot of cybercrime victims, ransomware victims have been targets of opportunity. There's a Dutch journalist, Huib Modderkolk, who for the Volkskrant did an interview with a ransomware operator, or somebody who claimed to be a ransomware operator.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this is difficult to verify because people don't post that on LinkedIn. You're chatting with somebody who says he does, but there was enough reason to believe that this person was at least to some degree credible.
Yeah.
And at some point he asked, how do you select your victims? And the answer was, we don't. So if there was a new vulnerability out, and I think 2 weeks ago there was a new vulnerability on software called Confluence. Today there's a new vulnerability out on something on a product of Citrix. You can forget about the details.
Yeah.
But if there's a new vulnerability out, it basically means for the people who run around the street to see if doors are open, it means they have a new trick. They have a new way to tap the lock and see if it opens. And they just go around, scan the entire internet and see, you know what, there's 5,000 servers here that are exposed that I can get access into.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I'm going to sell on that access. And those are going to become the new ransomware victims.
And these are vulnerabilities usually in software that then a company like the Citrix or Confluence needs to do a little bit of programming.
Yeah.
And that needs to be patched.
Yeah, see it like a recall action on a car.
Yeah.
So you get a notice from your garage saying, listen, if you hit the bumper in the wrong place, your car will open.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back to the garage to get it fixed. Now this is software, so there's a little bit less logistics involved because software can be shipped quite easily.
Yeah.
But it still but the other thing is it does require some action from you or your system administration or the company that does your system administration for you. And we see over the years, we see the window between the vulnerability being known and people taking advantage of it for ransomware or other crime. We see that window shrinking.
Yeah.
So you can see if right now, if you leave your systems unpatched for a week or a month, then you're already starting to get ransomware problems. So the windows are getting shorter, and that means you have to be more diligent. And that's why this crime of opportunity, it's important to realize, because you have to make yourself a less likely target.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of hard work. It's dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure that you do. And I think the Dutch National Cybersecurity Center has a top 10 of basic baseline practices. Digital Trust Center in the Netherlands has that. CISA in America has published a top 10 list of things you can do. So I can sit here and produce another, but if you Google 10 baseline security practices, you will get them.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you should patch, but that's definitely not the only thing you should do. But it's one of the most important.
So the most important things are patch your systems. Make sure your systems are well maintained. Yeah. So if you're still running your own mail server, should you think about it? Maybe you should hand it off to a specialist. If you're using cloud services, put on multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
So that if they have your password, they still need something extra to get in, which makes it a lot harder. Separate your critical systems from your non-critical systems. Yep. And now I just ticked up the first 4. There's more, but it's a lot of work, and it comes down to proper maintenance, which is just like, what do you do to prevent your truck going out of it's maintenance. Yeah. And we see a lot of, unfortunately, in my work at the DIVD, I see a lot of poor maintenance. I see systems that are not getting their patches for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. We see evidence that people we warned have now been infected with malware. Because when we send them an email for warning, we don't hear anything back. And then 2-3 months later, we get a mail back from that email address, a reply to the warning we send. It's like, hey, I have that document you asked for. It's here. Click the link. By the way, this is the password. And if you click that document, that's actually a bit of malware. Wow. And that's a way to get in. So I know there's infected systems out there that are... Not every system gets encrypted. There's also systems that are being used to encrypt other systems, and it's a bit similar to people whose Facebook accounts get hacked, which then try to send out messages to other people's Facebook accounts saying, "Hey, click this link," and in that way hack other people again. Yeah, and you're mentioning clicking the link, so training your people. And making them aware of the most basic things, like having two-factor authentication and not clicking suspicious documents or weird links. I guess there's awareness helps, but technical measures help as well. Yeah. It used to be that I think we should stop calling people who fall for this stupid, because the criminals are getting better as well. Yeah. There's very convincing. Obviously, the emails about the Nigerian prince that's sleeping on his bed of money and is about to die. That message is deliberately unbelievable, because if you're willing to believe something, you're an easy target, and that's the pre-selection. But phishing emails can be very convincing, and I don't think you can. So I think we also need to look at technical measures. Yeah. Because we're getting to the point where it's going to be really hard to distinguish spam phishing email from legitimate email. Well, and there's DocuSign is an example. They now know how to make near perfect replicas of DocuSign messages. Same happens with other kinds of messages. they know how to replicate these things.
Yeah, and
So
I'm getting messages on my phone, and this is just me being a consumer, that are very similar to track and trace messages from the main parcel carriers saying something's wrong with your package. Click here, and they will just they will have an email address that almost looks like
yeah,
the original address.
yeah.
So
So it does help. I think people talk about awareness. Is there no awareness around? I think there are still companies who are in denial, who
yes,
think that ransomware, that they're not interesting enough for a criminal. You don't have to be interested enough for everybody else. You just have to be interesting enough for yourself.
yeah,
If your answer to the question, can I live with can I continue to operate? No, I invite them to think about the darkest scenario.
yeah,
What would happen if today you weren't able to use your computer and smartphone? And if the answer to that question is, I can't run my business without them, then you're interested enough to be ransomed.
yeah. So
But
that's
even if
almost everybody.
and even if you're not interested enough to get ransomed, then still, if you're it's like walking around on the streets at night with your wallet sticking out of your
Yeah,
out of your pocket.
yeah,
Even if the wallet is empty, somebody will see an opportunity and grab your wallet.
yeah.
Now,
So
it might not hurt too bad that you lost an empty wallet,
yeah,
but you're still going to be a victim. And once they're in, it's a hard job to getting them out again.
getting them out. Yeah. Okay. So now, I've patched my systems. I've trained my people. I've separated critical systems from non-critical system. I've done almost anything imaginable, but these guys are getting really good, and now they're in.
Yeah,
And we don't know how, but now they're in. So what do I do then? Or maybe what should I have done before they were in?
yeah. So I think the first thing to realize is that even if you take all the measures, that's not a guarantee that you'll never be a victim.
Yeah.
But it's basically like it can happen to everybody, but the lazy people first.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's true. But you can do everything, still get hacked, and then I think the really then I would say plan for it.
Yeah.
Plan for the eventuality. So that means having your backup strategy in order, things like that. But also be ready to have that negotiation. And these guys hire professional negotiators. Maybe you should too. Because I know heartbreaking stories of companies that are family companies where dad started the business with horse and carriage, and now they have a fleet of I don't know how many trucks. It's hard to stay rational when your life's work is at risk.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And the easiest person to do a negotiation with as a counterpart is an emotional person.
Yeah.
Because he's willing to do everything to get through the nightmare. It makes you really pliable.
Yeah.
Incident response is something that takes practice to be good at. And I wish nobody, I hope that nobody has that practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit like the fire department. Putting out the fire takes practice. And we can't all be firemen.
No.
So look for your digital firemen. Look for the people who, and get a retainer with them. Get a company that's willing to have your back if that's happening. If you're a bigger company, maybe your IT security department can do this for you. But for smaller companies, this is specialist work. See if you can get a retainer. Maybe get an insurance to cover this for you, because that's the good thing about an insurance. Then you don't pay up front, but you pay a small fee, and they can help you with getting these people in. Yeah, and make sure you can recover. Murphy's Law says that if something can happen at some point or another, it will.
It will, yeah.
So make sure you can recover. It's easier to negotiate saying we'll get you your data back. Yeah, I can get my data back myself from a backup. Unfortunately, nowadays they do double extortion. So they say if you don't pay, if you pay, we will give you your data back and we won't publish it.
Yeah.
So there is some embarrassment there, and there's still an incentive to pay. They're cunning. I would say clever, but I think cunning is the better word.
Is a better word. Yeah.
But it is being prepared, making sure you have a secondary site, or making sure you have a plan to restore your business in case this happens to you, because it might.
So, Frank, thanks for explaining what people can do to prepare, and what the biggest threats are, and also what they can do when they get hacked, and how to prepare for that event. What I would like to ask you as a final question is, what are we looking at in terms of the future? We have Industry 4.0 with companies putting sensors in all sorts of equipment, like CMA is putting a tracking sensor in all of their containers, which means all of their containers are connected. We have drones delivering packages. There's all sorts of robots operating inside and outside of buildings. What are we looking at from a cybersecurity point of view?
Yeah, so you see that with those technologies, our reliance on information technology, and just like our reliance on logistics has increased, our reliance on information has increased as well. But it also increases the attack surface. How do you target your companies? We don't target our companies. We find a gap somewhere, and then you follow it and see where it leads.
Yeah.
If you're going to do Industry 4.0, if you're going to connect your OT to your IT, and there's a world to win by connecting OT and IT, but there's also a world to lose.
Yeah.
Because right now, the reason that Colonial Pipeline shut down when they had a ransomware attack was not because the systems operating the valves and operating the actual pipeline were ransomed, but the risk of those systems getting ransomed, and they shut down operations as a precaution.
Yeah.
If you integrate your administrative processes with what's actually happening in the field, which is part of what Industry 4.0 is, it also means that it's easier to really get into those primary processes.
Yeah.
So you might see, instead of your data being held ransomed, it's actually primary process that's being held ransom. Could be that an energy grid of a country is at some point being ransomed. And that's something you don't want. Now, there are good ways to separate, to make sure that you can still get the data from the OT world and bring that into the IT world without introducing those risks. But it takes a lot of careful thought and planning. Basically realize that when you're doing this, you are becoming that you're taking the step from being a logistics company that has IT to an IT company that has a logistics process. And you should put your environment together like that. Talk to specialists, talk to companies who do this to prevent this risk, and really put thought into this. And it may now sound very bleak, but I think there is a world to win. We've run projects in the supply chain world where we were able to reduce water wastage in some processes. We were able to reduce, to optimize supply chains, to increase production by simply reading out sensors that were already there and integrating them with stuff that's in the administration.
Yeah.
Or just by simply making them visible on the floor. There's a world to win for the world, for profit, but also to reduce waste and carbon emissions and stuff like that. But you have to keep your head at it and realize that cybersecurity is part of that game.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And you were talking about an IT company having logistics processes. Then so maybe I need to name the podcast "Does IT Matter?" But I'm sure that your answer to that question is yes as well.
Hell yes.
Frank, thank you very much for being a guest on this show and educating us on cybersecurity.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Does Logistics Matter? For more on trends and innovations in supply chain and logistics, visit our blog on logisticsmatter.com. If you want to be a guest on this podcast, please send an email to podcast@logisticsmatter.com. This podcast was produced by Dimitri Vleugel. The music is based on a sample by Ruggerman and produced by Michael Spengler. This episode was supported by Schuberg Philis. Schuberg Philis delivers mission-critical IT services that address the needs and priorities across different industries, including logistics and infrastructure. For more information, visit schubergphilis.com. That's SCHUBERGPHILIS.com.